Oh, I'm triggered!
Trigger warning.
I'm back!
Thank you for giving me the trigger warning. I'm so much better now.
Sorry, I should have probably said that after. Trigger warnings are supposed to go before, not after. Like, by the way, I was just going to trigger you.
Well,
So
it worked. And we're back.
Seriously, that's what this reminds me of. That.
Yeah.
Now, like,
Yeah, anyways, you just keep talking. Hey, we're back! And they keep going. I can't remember what they were talking about.
It was him and Ben Affleck, and he was like on the radio station, the radio DJ or whatever, and he's like, "We're gonna take a break from our regularly scheduled program," and then it would be like Z100 or whatever, and then it would be like, you know, doing whatever and come back and do the thing, Z100, and whack!
right.
Just,
But they got into like an "and we're back" fight, and I don't remember why.
They kept going back and forth about like, he was like, "Oh, Sag, my intern," you know, it was like saying through these different accents, and like, "Man in the can, get back in that can," and then Ben Affleck would be like, "Man in the box, get back in that box." He's like, "Wait a minute, like, those are my characters."
Oh yeah,
like stealing each other's characters.
Oh, that's yeah, that's right. There's that.
Have a little like bro fight, and then they like hugged it out at the end or something.
Yeah, I don't remember the
Oh,
fight.
that's funny.
Anyway,
Well, maybe.
I guess we should probably talk about triggers.
I guess so.
Managing
Let's
them.
do it. Let's do it. All right, here we go. Hey everyone, welcome to the Shrink Think podcast. We have another exciting episode for you today, but this one, trigger warning, is about triggers. We're actually not going to trigger you, but we're going to be talking about triggers. And if you were not watching this on YouTube before, go back and watch, because there was a little bit of a triggering that happened. So good thing we got that out of the way before we started recording this podcast episode. But today we actually want to talk about this kind of buzzword that people are throwing around. They're like, "Oh, I'm so triggered," or like, "This happened and I'm triggered." "Ah, you're looking down, I'm triggered." And
You're
like,
looking down.
like, what's happening?
You're not making eyes. You're not gluing your eyes to my eyes. That triggers me.
Like, what does that even mean? Do you even know what that means, right? I'm hoping that, well, like, we can, like, break down, like, what are triggers, what's happening with triggers, and what do you do about it?
I think we should talk about the evolution of the word trigger.
It comes from the word trigonometry. No, it doesn't.
Trigonometry. Oh, man.
So, this was kind of your brainchild here. So, like, where did this come from? And maybe we'll start talking about, like, in the beginning. I have this thing that I like to tell people when they say, like, "Oh, I'm triggered, and what do you do about it?" And I'm like, wait a minute, let's back up first. And let's talk about what's actually happening when a trigger is going on. And maybe we can kind of begin to differentiate, too. Like, is this an actual trigger, or are you, like, having an emotion? And calling it, "I'm triggered," to feeling sad. I'm triggered to feeling uncomfortable. That's just called being a human being.
I think so. Wait a minute. Are you feeling discomfort? And I don't like it. Stop triggering me to feel discomfort. I totally hate that when I feel discomfort. Anyway, like, yeah. And so it is one of those things, actually, that over the course of time, part of the why I was thinking about this is because there is a real issue here. And also, there's the word trigger, which I don't want. I was just joking. I'm not going over the evolution of the word trigger. But it kind of has diminished in its value. So, I mean, some people hear it and they're like, okay, don't care. So moving on, which is not helpful for somebody that actually does have PTSD and they really are triggered.
Right. Meanwhile, back in the corner, there are actual people being triggered.
Right. So maybe we should start with what actually a trigger is. And also, I want to say the reason I'm bringing this entire thing up is because ultimately, and some of you are not going to like this, managing that trigger and fixing it is the job of the person who is getting triggered.
Wait, it's not your job to make me feel better all the time? I want an ice cream cone. Nathan, will you please give me an ice cream cone?
Be right back!
You didn't? I'm triggered. Okay, so in all seriousness, when people say that they're triggered, I don't think they really understand what's really happening. So I want to kind of lay that out here. Will usually say what is being triggered, because a trigger means that something has happened, and I'll use a different phrase. Instead of triggered, something from my past has been activated. Maybe it was like dormant, or it was like residing somewhere in my body or whatever. It was somewhere, and now it's being activated in me as though that past thing is now presently happening. And I'm experiencing all of the symptoms and body sensations, maybe like flashbacks, memories that are I guess attributed to that memory or that thing. And so that past thing is being triggered or activated in me, and now I am dysregulated. My nervous system is dysregulated. That's what a trigger actually is.
So maybe think about it like this, just in oversimplistic terms. Something really bad happens to you, and when that happens, this little light switch gets built, and that light switch has connection to your entire body. And then the bad thing kind of goes away, because of time, and that light switch is switched off. It's just off. But you don't know that it's there. You don't even know there is a switch. And you're doing your life, and all of a sudden, that switch, unbeknownst to you, just gets turned on. And it turns on every single feeling that your body had 5 years ago when something bad happened, and you don't know why. Like when it first starts going, you have no idea. You don't even necessarily all the time have memory of everything that's going on. Your body just takes off like it was in the exact situation that was originally harmful.
Like it's as though your body was like a slingshot pulled back just like as far as it can go, right? And just waiting there. And then like 5 years later, that light switch goes off and whoosh,
gotcha.
There it is.
I gotcha.
I finally could release that.
Oh my gosh, we should have trigger warning people.
I did at the very beginning.
Yeah, that's right.
This whole episode is
a trigger, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I will often tell people is, look, it's not your job. Like if you're the partner for somebody that has PTSD, it's not your job to manage their triggers. However, don't be an ass.
Right, exactly.
Like, well, it's not my job. I don't care about that.
Because technically donkeys, we want to keep the explicit.
Don't be a donkey.
The donkeys are not very polite and thoughtful about other people, so don't be a donkey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, don't worry about that. I mean, there's no kids listening to this. I'm just
kidding. They should. We should start them young.
They'll know everything. I'm just kidding. So, at any rate, when some kind of trigger is happening, and this is why I guess I wanted to do this in the first place, is because there's become a thing where everybody's so afraid to, like, there is like this weird societal expectation, it seems like, for the people that are not triggered to literally manage the people that are triggered. Here's the problem. Therapeutically, you have to intentionally work against that trigger. You have to somehow manage it. Meaning, like, the person has to figure it out. And the reason why is there's this thing that I try to call, and I don't know if there's a specific name for it off the top of my head, but I kind of call it trigger migration, where what ends up happening is the more that you obey your fear from whatever it is that you're scared of, that you're triggered by, you will just put yourself in an isolation box eventually. And as an example, maybe something bad happened to you in this room, and inside this room that you were in, the weird thing about that room is there was a blue bed in it. It was a weird blue bed. And so bad things happened in there. And later in life, you're driving down the freeway, and all of a sudden you're triggered by something. You don't know what it is. Anyways, you figure out, like, oh, it's that car. That's what it is. It's the cars on the road that I don't like. But then we figure out, no, it's not the cars on the road. It's a particular color of the car on the road.
Maybe a blue color?
Yeah, right. So now you just need to not see that color, right? We just need to not do that.
Take it out of the world.
So now you need to ask your partner not to wear that particular shirt.
And sign some legislation to ban it from the country.
Yeah. To be honest, I didn't see that coming, but I should have.
If we're going to go all the way.
Right.
Let's go to the top, baby. Let's take it out.
Right. And so you find yourself in the situation where the other person is so fear avoidant, which makes sense. Who wants to be afraid? Like, why would you want to do that? But they get their entire group of people around them to agree to protect them in this way.
Or to collude with the fear.
Yeah,
that's another word that I like to use.
It's like a better word. Yeah.
Right, because nobody wants to be caught in collusion, right? You're colluding with the dysfunctional or hurt, damaged, dysregulated part of this person, and you're saying it's okay to be that way.
So imagine, the reality of this is some of you guys that are listening that have got, some PTSD about something, and honestly, you're not really doing anything about it. There's probably people in your life that are not inviting you to things just because they don't want to try to manage that for you. They just don't. And what I would challenge you in is, if you are in therapy and your therapist is trying to get you to do X, Y, Z and it's too scary, I challenge you, look, you're going to have to bite the bullet. You can actually get through this, because the real problem is your body is programmed from something else that already happened. Your body just doesn't know it's over. That's really the end of the day. That's it. Your body thinks it's still happening.
Because essentially that thing from the past is trying to suck you from the present out of the present to go back into the past to relive and replay that thing as though it is still happening. As though the past is right now. Except it's not bringing the past into the right now. It's leaving the right now and going back into the past, which is a stuck place.
Right. And we've talked about some of this before, and I guess maybe not all at once. And so the one thing I would add is your frontal lobe is the part of your brain that organizes data and everything. And so that part is actually disconnected, because when everything happened, your body flooded, it was overwhelmed. That was the first part of your brain that was kicked out of the building. But programming happened while that part was not programming.
Mm-hmm. So it's unplugged from the front of your brain, so that what's going on in the back can have a party and good, they're not here, all the parents in the frontal lobe are not here. We can do whatever we want, man. Yeah. All that was programmed back there.
Yeah, and actually, if you think about it, we connect as people kind of frontal lobe to frontal lobe, really. And so
my forehead to forehead.
That's what we always do, Aaron. I don't know why anybody else doesn't do that.
That was a personal thing you didn't have to share with people. Now it's awkward that everyone knows.
It is awkward. So it's interesting, as I'm sitting here kind of thinking this out right now in this moment, that when you are trying to get, when your frontal lobe is trying to kind of manage, because it will do it. Your frontal lobe will automatically try to figure things out. It does it without you thinking about it. So when it goes back and tries to access that information for whatever reason, I need to understand what that color blue is, and it goes, all of a sudden it's triggered a part of a neural network that's whoa, and it gets kicked out again. So then the frontal lobe goes, well, that sucks. What I've learned is blue is not good. So then, as you're connecting frontal lobe to your friends, you're going here's what my frontal lobe learned. Blue's not good. Your frontal lobe needs to make sure that you don't let my frontal lobe go around blue at all.
And then my fear gets activated because I'm oh no, I don't want to upset you. And that's scary because I see what's happening to you. I'm okay, I guess we'll just avoid blue together.
Yes. And in extreme cases, you can get what's called shared psychosis. Congratulations. This actually happens mainly to the elderly when something goes wrong. But if you collude so much that it's happening all the time, then you can literally feel the anxiety going into your room.
It's you start taking on the fear or taking on that problem of the other person.
And the reality is you just can't do that. You are not helping the other person if all you're doing is making sure that they're in a certain type of environment.
Because one of us in the room has to be grounded. One of us has to have some objectivity for what's going on, and lead the other person into that safety and that objectivity. So, for example, if Nathan is the psycho with the blue problem, sorry, not a psycho. He's the weirdo. What's a better term for this?
I don't know. The person.
Person. Let's just go with a non-judgmental term. That's a great idea. If he's the person with this blue problem. That song is playing in my head now. No.
I don't know what that song is.
I'm blue and da-ba-dee-ba-da.
Okay.
If he's the guy that's got this blue problem, I've got to be in the room with him, and when he's blue, whatever, and I'm Nathan, there's nothing, I understand that you've got this issue and that was something from the past or whatever, but like there's nothing wrong here. Everything's safe, right? Like my tone of voice is normal. I can be sensitive and compassionate, but I don't have to make him feel something because that's his job. I can't regulate his body. I mean, maybe I wrap around him and like give him a big hug, and like, shh, maybe that's what he needs. And that honestly can help sometimes, but that's not my job to regulate his body. He's got to do that for himself. But if I'm grounded and objective in the room, I can actually lead him into that by saying, hey, it's okay. And he's got now some other environmental information that he can use to challenge whatever is going on in his brain and his body that's saying, I'm feeling like there's something to be panicked about, but this dude that I know, that I trust, that is smart, and doesn't have the same problem, is telling me that everything's okay, so what am I going to believe? And he's now got a fork in the road where he can go back toward his fear, or he can move out of it toward regulating himself.
Yeah, I think as you're talking, I think we need to be in a way almost like more specific. And the reason why is because you really need a plan, like with the therapist. So, and nacho therapist, baby. So in light of that, if your partner, for example, is going to therapy to work on this kind of stuff, you need to know ultimately what the plan is. You need to know what it is that you're being asked to do or not do. Because in the beginning, especially when somebody doesn't really understand what's going on and they are experiencing the trigger, it's very confusing. Most people will think that they are actually going crazy. That's the language they will use. And it is very confusing. So you wouldn't want to take what Aaron and I are saying and then go like, well, that's it. Just suck it up, Buttercup. Walk into the blue room, baby.
Yeah, right. No, we're definitely not saying that. At least not as harshly. There might be a plan to get to a place where you are walking into the blue room, right? If you've got the fear of a blue room, like that might be the thing that you need to ultimately land in.
Right. The idea is that you hold two things up at the same time. One, that this is really happening for this person. And two, that you're not going to collude with it, but you need to be respectful of it. And you are not their therapist. So like, we're not saying like, okay, you need to go do these things. Like, you're not a part of the desensitization of what's going on. And actually, there are cases in PTSD where they found that desensitization does not work in some cases. It actually is re-traumatizing. So that's why I'm saying, like, and you don't know what those are. And by the way, we don't necessarily either, because we are not working with a specific client right now. We're talking to the general public. So some people, when we're talking about that whole subject, it has to be tailored essentially to the person. And I just want to be clear about that because we're not saying that you need to go out there and just basically push people into things and that kind of thing or not be respectful. There is a thing that happens though, and it's so annoying to me, that you get somewhere sometimes with people in therapy and they kind of have gone as far as they want to. They're basically too scared to go farther. And they've put that out to their public, to their own social groups too. Everybody kind of knows it. And quite frankly, and in some of these situations, the person's basically agreeing to be a victim of this. Maybe they're getting a lot of attention that way. I guarantee you, if that's you, it's not what you want. I mean, that's not the kind of thing that you want, because people are essentially putting up with that to be around you. But if I would just encourage you, okay, you're already with your therapist. You've got now a lot of people that are trying to like support you because they care about you. They're trying to respect the fact that you've got these different triggers that are going on. And by the way, sometimes you can't fix some of this stuff. Like, that's the thing that sucks, that you can get into a situation where you just can't fix it. But you can isolate it down. You can isolate it way down to specific situations though, instead of letting it go the other way where it starts to globalize your entire existence and you can't do anything.
So I want to just kind of sneak in here a little bit, just in the last couple minutes that we've got of this episode, and say we've been talking a lot about if you actually have a trigger, like I think we're breaking it down and we're sharing about what that actually looks like, where it comes from, how you treat it, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully that's helpful for if that's you, you're like, oh yeah, that's totally me. Maybe it encourages you to seek some professional help and work with somebody, a professional who's knowledgeable and skilled with trauma. And also, I want to sneak this other part in, which is kind of where we started off and joking about, right? Which is, if you're listening to this and you use that term all the time, like, I'm triggered, and you're like, yeah, I don't have any of those experiences with the blue room or any, like, a blue bed or nothing like that, right? It's just, I'm feeling uncomfortable, or I'm feeling whatever, the distress, and it's not, like, linked to something like that. I think you need to stop using that word, right? You start using the I'm feeling this emotion. I'm feeling scared, or I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling frustrated, annoyed, whatever the feeling is. Increase your emotional vocabulary so that you can actually better identify what's happening for you, because that will actually help decrease the experience of it. Because essentially, if you're using the term I'm triggered, and to you, that's meaning all the stuff that we just got done talking about that really is not your experience, you actually might be magnifying your emotional experience into something that it's not. So by using the correct emotional vocabulary, you're correctly identifying what you're feeling, labeling those things, and that brings some like soothing and comfort to your system, and it shrinks it down to the size that it actually is.
A lot of times you can have a flood of emotions about something that you didn't expect to. That doesn't mean you were triggered, but it does mean that you might not be able to say anything. So the problem with the trigger is it's pointing to something that is real, that definitely happened, and that's an event that has probably nothing to do with the current event that you're in. So the other thing too is that if you do not change your language around this and you try to stay the same way, you're also kind of agreeing not to process that information. Because what you're saying is, I am not talking about this entire subject because it makes me feel a certain way. And you're not going to talk about how you feel either, because you don't have to. You just kind of got out of it. You say you're triggered, well, that's it. The other person's like, oh, I guess I can't talk about that. They're not going to probe on it, because in our society, we do kind of know enough culturally to go like, I really shouldn't press into that one. So now you're just isolated inside that emotional state, which in all irony keeps you going the wrong direction, because you're losing some human contact. So like Aaron's saying, develop some more emotional vocabulary over it. Try to, even if you have to take a moment, like, hey, I got to back up. I don't know what just happened. I don't know what I'm feeling.
I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Maybe start there.
Yeah. Then okay. Then you get space. People will check back in with you. Typically, when that happens, they'll probably give you some space and they'll ask something later. So be mindful of this. We hope it's helpful. It's happening now. We're ending. Have a great day.
And now that makes me just want to, I kind of wanted to end, we were getting low on time, but I just wanted to like talk and move forward and be like, and this is the end of the episode. We're forehead to forehead. This is how we end every episode. See that I like this. Touching foreheads. That's actually how we come up with all of our ideas. What are we going to do today? I'm not sure. Give me your head.
Whoa, I
I
like
think
two different ideas, man.
There was an old show like the Coneheads. I think they did. I think they did touch
might,
heads.
Yeah.
Like to
They
try to
might
like oh, that is so fun. Thank you, buddy. Like there was some connection that they had when they did it. Anyways, that's
No, I think you're right.
I don't remember what they did.
That was good. Oh man. Stop recording.